I'm Jade with Hivenation. Hivenation is an SAP marketplace built for consultants by consultants. We're here to help every independent SAP consultant like yourself to not only find your next project, but also help you to grow your income, your skills, and your network. On this show, we bring on the world's experts to discuss everything from how to implement the latest trends in SAP and technology into your everyday operations to helping you take your career in SAP to the next level. Check us out and join today at hivenation.com. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Hive Nation podcast. In this segment, we'll be discussing the current state of SAP Concur, how recent changes in this market have impacted independent consulting, and how SAP Concur expert guest overcomes his most common challenges. With almost 20 years of experience in the financial industry and project management, and over a dozen years of experience in the management, implementation, deployment, and integration of complex Concur projects, both domestic and international, please welcome Zerbini Luna. Hello, Zerbini, and welcome to the Hive Nation podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Jay. Thank you very much for having me here.
Absolutely. So, for people not in the Concur world, can you briefly describe what SAP Concur is?
Sure. SAP Concur is basically a tool to manage travel and expense at the company at the enterprise level, right? Most companies have people who travel. The people who travel, they do have, most of the time, they do have company issued credit cards. And Concur provides this integration between the credit card issuer and then the expense system that will capture those expenses and then later charge the cost centers or the company codes or depending on how the client sets Concur up. It's a way to track basically that expense all the way to the posting and the bottom line.
Gotcha. So, this is basically digitizing what I used to do, which is manually collect receipts, which were then copied onto an expense report. And I would have to go one by one, entering them into like an Excel spreadsheet, which
Right.
was kind of a nightmare.
Yes, Excel was the old way. Concur also has a travel module, which allows you to book travel, book your hotel, your rent a car, buy your airfare, and everything's integrated in one tool with a workflow that is defined by the company, and then that promotes transparency and best practices.
Fantastic. So SAP had recently, well, somewhat recently acquired Concur. Have you noticed any significant changes, and if there were any benefits, what those were?
Well, it seems because SAP is such a gigantic company, right? When they acquired Concur, of course, there was a change probably in the Concur culture. I would say so far, from what I have seen, the speed of changes that happen with Concur, they have increased dramatically. New innovations, come more often than before, and then I see SAP clients switching to Concur versus the old SAP tool they used to offer their clients. So that created a new global demand for Concur implementations.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, SAP is huge. So having them all switch over, it's a huge clientele base. That's fantastic. With all the changes, especially at the speed at which they're coming, do you find it difficult to keep yourself updated on all these new changes?
Yes, I mean, as an independent consultant, you try to keep up with the speed of changes, with the new releases they have. SAP Concur actually has a pretty good community site that you can go and then get a glimpse of what's going on. You have access to the documentation, and then it's a matter of self discipline as an independent consultant to keep yourself aware of the changes and the innovations that are coming into Concur scenario.
Mhm.
However, it will never be the same as when you first work for Concur, right? Because you are there, you're breathing Concur 24/7, not 24/7, I would say, but most of the days of the week with lots of clients, and then you are trained constantly on the changes. When you leave Concur, you become independent consultant. You try to keep up the best you can, but in consulting, I think I mentioned this before in our previous conversations. it's more than just Concur configuration that the clients are looking for. They're looking for a mix between that knowledge and then business processes, maybe some finance knowledge, maybe project management. It's really helpful. Integration skills with other systems that comes into play as well.
So in terms of changes, how do you actually go about keeping yourself updated? Is it you mentioned discipline, which seems to be a common theme for independent consultants, especially in terms of education. Would you say, this is once a month, once a year, during conferences? What's your strategy on keeping up with all the new tools?
Oh, great. That's a great point. Well, usually when I'm engaged in a project, new demands from the clients, come up naturally, right? And
Mhm.
then to meet those demands, we always look into the Concur team that we are work with, and then we get exposure to those changes, and then we try to update our knowledge as we go, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Sometimes things change, and then new versions of the SA file, which is I don't want to go technical here, but that's something that may happen. The new Concur interface, things of that nature that will pop up, on a deployment. And then the best way to keep yourself, up to date
Mhm.
is by first interacting with the Concur people. Second, by going to the community site, SAP Concur community site, and then and getting the documentation from there, and then reading it.
I see. So basically, when you're on a job and they ask for something new, it's about looking up that documentation and then just implementing it.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't necessarily have to, take a class or do something once a month, once a year. It's while you're on the job.
Right. The core configuration skills, they are still the same. If you are a consultant with a Concur background, meaning you have worked at Concur before and you did configuration and you did work in a few projects, you would get that core knowledge, right? But then things are changing with SAP since the SAP acquisition, and the speed of change has increased, right? New offerings and new features. Then you just you see it in a project
Mhm.
when it comes up, and then you also try to get ahead of the curve by that's what I do in particular. I always keep visiting the Concur community site, and also the SAP knowledge base to keep myself aware of what's going on and what are the new releases, what's in the pipeline from Concur, both in the expense side and then the travel side. Although I do mostly expense projects, not travel. It's a different set of skills.
Gotcha. It's a good distinction to make here. When you're dealing with clients that want something new, have you noticed that clients typically know what to ask for, or do you find that they're asking for something a little bit more general, vague, some sort of company type of business implementation, and then you have to go and see if the new SAP Concur can actually configure that?
Yeah, I mean, for example, I'll give you a very good example here. I have been involved in implementing Concur in Asia Pac, for the past 6 months, and then as we do testing in the test environment, we have to refresh it, to basically. Basically, Concur has to do two jobs. They have to configure first in production and then copy to test, and then we do the testing in the test environment. So that takes a lot of coordination, and it takes time. Next year, Concur is heard the clients, calls and observations and maybe demands, and they're going to offer automatic sync between production and test. So that will greatly help during the testing phase of a deployment, for example.
So that's one of the benefits of it being acquired by SAP, right? They have the ability to just start implementing these new changes almost immediately.
Yeah, they try to standardize, Concur. They have other initiatives that I find very interesting, such as SAP Fiori, which has to do with the user interface being a standard across all the SAP
Mhm.
applications. the tool is looking like ever more as a phone app, and it's becoming intuitive. I think hopefully faster. Concur, SAP Concur has strived to make the tool faster. When you're saving a report, when you're submitting for approval, when you're loading a receipt, things of that
Mhm.
nature. I hear complaints and I hear good things. So it's a mix.
Right.
But I see that SAP Concur is moving towards change, and I think the change will be welcomed by most clients.
Well, I think if it's looking more and more like an app, that's something that, our children know how to do, how to use. So,
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
so speaking of change, how has COVID impacted this market? I know you deal more on the expense side than the travel side, but with there being less company travel and companies adopting more of a work from home hybrid model, have you seen a decrease in projects? Has that affected the Concur market?
Not at all. I mean, you're correct when you say that that there has been a decrease in travel. That is correct. There was a point that nobody was traveling, right? However, the teams that used to travel, then
Hmm.
they needed to buy equipment for the home office, for example, and that is captured in Concur as well, right? Every expense from the employee. So all those expenses, they also got captured in Concur. I mean, that's one way to look at why companies didn't stop like with the deployment plans for Concur. As a matter of fact, they tried to improve on it. There was another project that I did last year that there was an expense type revamp project from a client in Irvine, where they just wanted to make the set of expense types more up to date and compatible with the new reality, right?
Right. Yeah. It's almost like the construction industry where a lot of people, a lot of companies took this quote unquote downtime to just revamp and improve while they can.
Yeah, maybe the airfare, the meal expenses, went down by a lot. Hotel expenses, car rental, which is slowly creeping up again.
Mhm.
But mostly, I see a shift to equipment. For example, home office equipment, training, right? In other
Oh,
kinds
okay.
of company subsidies that are now being captured in Concur.
I see. Kind of like my home office, probably your home
Hmm.
office,
Exactly.
everyone's home
Yeah.
office. Hopefully, we'll be able to instill like soundproofing or something. We'll
Yeah.
see. The new
Exactly.
normal. So, what are some of the most common challenges you've faced as a Concur SAP independent Concur consultant over the years?
Well, the most challenging situation that I encountered, without a doubt, is the uncertainty of the next project, right? When you sign up for a project, usually it could be 6 months, could be a year, depending on the
Mm-hmm.
complexity. But then once you're done, you don't know what's coming next, right? So in order to be an independent consultant, I had to prepare myself, both financially and also mentally, right, for those periods, of pause. The longest I had to endure was 6 months,
Okay.
and the shortest a week.
Okay.
So yeah, so it varies a lot. I mean, you cannot let yourself be beat up by this, and oh, why nobody is looking for me, or why I'm not in a project now. It can take time, for a good fit to come in, because most companies are not really looking for a Concur configurator. They're looking for more. They're looking for a project manager. They're looking for somebody with a process, finance and accounting skills, uh, business process skills, right? Analytical skills,
Hmm.
because a deployment is a lot more than just a Concur deployment is a lot more than just the Concur plan that can be executed by Concur itself, right? What the companies need, and they need help with, is with the other pieces: change management, communications, training, right? And then the actual execution of a project plan, which many times I'm given the task of creating the project plan and executing it.
So, what kind of background would you say one should be prepared to have before becoming an independent SAP Concur consultant?
Well, the background is number one. You need to understand the tool, right? You need to understand
Hmm.
the actual application, and having exposure to configuration is great. It's a big help because behind the scenes, what the client doesn't see as far as behind the scenes configuration of the tool. However, also the skills necessary to run a project, the skills necessary to work with very diverse teams, right? From the business side,
Hmm.
from the IT side, from the payroll side, right? Different from the procurement side. So different players that you need to interact during deployment in order to make it work. So I'd say PM skills also very, very
Hmm.
necessary because, like I said, I have never encountered a role where I was just hired to be a Concur configurator because number one, most companies do not configure themselves, right?
Right.
They have Concur doing it for them, and most of the time, having the knowledge helps you translate the client's needs to Concur so they can configure it, as per request. But most of the time, you are executing a project plan, you're executing a cutover plan, and you are interacting with the internal client teams, right?
Hmm.
To make sure that you have captured the requirements correctly, that you have tested them correctly, and that you have integrated them correctly with other systems.
So, before becoming independent, you want to make sure that one, having a finance background would help, business understanding, and most importantly, project management.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, in my case, I was lucky. I had T&E exposure before I became a consultant. I was a finance manager for T&E, travel and expense. So that I was in that arena before I had my first Concur project.
And going back to your challenge of being independent, so let's say for people who have worked in Concur configuration and have project management and finance and business experience under their belt and ready to venture out onto their own. Getting that next project is a bit of a challenge, but just to put in a little plug here, the great thing with hivenation.com is
Yeah.
that really all you have to do is put up your available dates and the companies will actually search for you. So that's one of the biggest differentiators between us and other companies and staffing companies out there is you don't have to put your resume out and submit a bunch of times. Plus there's we're not a middleman, so you can save about 20% there. But also, if you're on a project till the end of next year, you can set your next year 2022, you can set your availability to 2023 and just sort of relax a little bit. So you've worked both domestically and internationally. Would you say that there are significant differences, in working in the United States versus abroad, or some challenges working abroad, or has the world become so globalized that it's pretty seamless?
Yes and no. Sometimes you find, depending on the country that you are
Hmm.
implementing, you find countries with local tax requirements, for example, that are very distinct from the
Hmm.
U.S.
Yep.
Right? Also, countries with privacy requirements, that are almost impossible to satisfy, like Austria, for example.
Oh,
Um, like, like places,
what are the
yeah,
privacy requirements in Austria?
like you cannot even use employee numbers, for example. Everybody's in Concur needs to have some kind of unique identifier, for
Uh-huh.
example, in the tool. And not even that we could use. I remember this one problem, for Austria.
How did
Uh,
you get around that?
we created a secondary way to identify to create a unique identifier. A mix between the employee email with something else. It was just
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it was just hard. So tax VAT recovery is another one. Language localization is
Hmm.
another one. if you do a project in Japan, most likely you're gonna have to localize Concur, right? Concur is it's advanced as far as what the user interface um, can be localized. I mean, Concur, if you switch the language, all the navigation menus are also switched to that specific language. However, any customization, any other rules that you created, for that deployment, you need to translate yourself, and then you need the help from the local team, for example. So, in general, foreign deployments are more complex than domestic.
So, what is your experience? We touched a little bit on this earlier, but what has your experience been after going independent as a Concur consultant? There's been a lot of talk about worrying about losing their certification. Can you talk a little bit about certification, why they might lose it if they go independent, and if it's had any impact on your ability to book clients?
No, it has not. That specific issue has not caused me to lose any projects. I mean, I think what clients are mostly interested when they hire me, for example, it's my capacity to deliver the deployment, right? And the deployment is Concur plus something else, right? So you would
Hmm.
think that, well, if they're not configuring the tool themselves, then they would not need somebody certified internally. Now, there are clients. I've been approached a couple of times, from clients that they just wanted somebody. They wanted to hire someone to configure Concur, some changes in Concur that they wanted to do. That's a different story. That may require a certification. I'm not certified, right? I worked for Concur before, and I learned Concur when I was working there. I
Hmm.
also as a client. I had 6 years deploying Concur as a client before I joined Concur. But certification after I left Concur, no. And but I don't see that as an impediment, or as a barrier for you to work on projects, because clients are mostly interested in your skills, right? And in
Hmm.
your past performance delivering projects.
So basically, if you can get the job done, you're hired.
Exactly. Yeah. Until proven otherwise.
Exactly. So, what are some of the benefits of becoming independent? We talked a little bit about some of your challenges, but why did you become independent?
Well, I became independent because I used to be in finance, in accounting, as I mentioned before. And when I was given this opportunity to deploy Concur globally, I got that taste in my mouth. That doing something different every day. So every deployment comes with challenges, right? And then challenges, meaning,
Hmm.
it can be
Hmm.
something outside of Concur, it can be something that needs to be done within Concur to meet the requirement, but also involves, dealing with people, different people, from different places, and that kind of, struck a chord with me, and made me like, that kind of work, which is basically project management work with knowledge about what you deploy, right? So that was it. That what was
Hmm.
what created the attraction for me, right? To be doing, instead of doing something repetitive, such as finance, every month doing the closing, and doing the annual closing, and all those long hours. I was doing something different, something more dynamic, something that had more changes, and I think I always like
Hmm.
change. So that kind of was a match for me.
That's interesting. It spoke to your
Yes,
soul.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, it can be, especially now, and especially with millennials and Gen Z entering the workforce. You're speaking our language here, where we don't want to be doing the same thing for the next 40, 50 years. So you bring up a good point. And, a lot of people talked about control as well, control over their career as an independent consultant. And I'm sure you've felt the same thing, as a Concur independent consultant. Would you say you have more control over the types of projects you choose, versus, working for a company and you're just put on whatever they tell you to do.
Absolutely. I mean, you, as an independent consultant, you are signing up for one project at a time, right? You're not signing up for one project and then you're given 10 projects within that project, right? Most of the time,
Is that common?
it's common if, for example, if I join a consulting company,
Mhm.
I work for many consulting, the big ones, firms. If I was to join them as an employee, I probably would be loaded with more than five projects simultaneously, right? Um,
Wow,
as an
that's a lot.
independent, yeah, it can be a lot to the point where you can forget the names of your clients, right? You so many
Uh-oh.
people, so many teams that I have a meeting today with who. So that aspect of it, it's also within your power. You signing up for projects that you can handle it, you can deliver
Mhm.
successfully, right? And without that hyper stress of being overloaded with many projects, right, and many deliverables that you cannot manage anymore. So I think that is a very good
Mhm.
thing that I enjoy, on the fact that I'm a independent consultant. I can choose the projects that I'm going to work on.
Nice. And you got your start, you said, by working in finance, and you worked at a company that was using Concur, and you transitioned yourself into becoming a Concur consultant.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for people who are in that same position and want to transition into consulting?
Yeah, I mean, just have courage. You need to have that courage to
Great
step
point.
yeah, to step aside, to make that decision. I was lucky. At the time I decided to become independent, I had just completed 2 years at Concur, and I saw the client side because I used to be a client, right? So I saw that there was a gap there that was not being
Mhm.
met by the Concur project plan, which is very Concur centric, by the way. But the client has many, many, many needs, many, many processes that are not addressed by the Concur deployment plan. So when you flip to the client side, you
Mm.
basically immerse yourself on their needs, on their processes, right? And then from there, you create a plan that makes sense for them, not for Concur, right? Concur has milestones that you have to meet, but
Mhm.
between those milestones, a lot needs to happen, right? For example, integrating Concur with the HR system, integrating
Mhm.
Concur with the ERP system in a way that everything works fine when Concur is live and people are creating reports and then the reports are being extracted and then posted into the financial system and for payment and tracking. So for that to happen, right, a lot needs to occur, and then that's what you need to be prepared to do.
So putting yourself in the client position before really venturing out to understand their needs.
Exactly, exactly. If you had that exposure, if you when you're dealing with clients, you feel their pain, and you think you can help them, then that's your call. I would
Mhm.
say you can make that decision, but be prepared. Financially. I was single at that time. I didn't have any possibilities. you know, I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have it took a while for me to be established and to kept going, but it was completely worth it. I don't regret 1 second of my decision.
And we at Hive Nation can help with that. If you're just starting out your business, it can be daunting, as you said, and that's one of the services we provide is helping you get on your feet, set up your services, set up your business entities, etc., and even help you look at your finances and how much runway and how many months you need before actually going out on your own. So reach out to us and we can help you out. Was
Right.
there a defining moment when did you have this aha moment when you're sitting at your desk and realize, nope, I have to quit, I have to become independent, I got to start my own company, or did this happen gradually over time?
Um, Definitely, there was a turning. That aha moment. Is. when I was working at Concur, Concur had just been acquired by SAP, and then I noticed that definitely a huge increase in the workload, right? Almost
Mm,
doubled. So I I asked myself, do I want to continue, and trying to do this, trying to keep up with the pace that they are determining for me, or do you think I can do a better job helping clients achieve, their goals by bringing in my knowledge, right, and then helping them with my other skills that I had as a client, right? So I kind of knew their pain.
mm,
Um, because I had deployed Concur in 13 countries, prior to joining Concur as a client. I was the PM for that internally, right, for the company side.
mhm,
So that really gave me a good insight of what the pain points are, right? And then the aha moment was really that when I noticed that I had too many projects coming in my direction, and that my life was going to be affected by it, in a negative way.
mhm. And you saw almost the freedom that independent consulting provides.
Yeah, I saw the risk and I
Mhm.
saw the freedom. I chose freedom.
And like you said it was completely worth it.
Yes, it was worth it. 12 years later, I'm still here and I'm having the pleasure to talking to you.
That's true. So would you like to give any last words of wisdom for independent SAP Concur consultants or those interested in this field?
Yes, prepare yourself, bring your baggage as a Concur configurator, as a Concur IPM. That definitely helps a lot. But also, prepare yourself with additional skills. I am PMP certified. That also helped me a lot to open a lot of doors
Hmm.
with the PMP certification. And put yourself out there, and trust your skills, and then you could be very successful.
Well, thank you so much, Zerbini. Very wise words. I hope everyone enjoyed the podcast and took value from this episode. I know I did. So thank you everyone for listening. If you'd like more information on using Concur or have a question for Zerbina Luna, please download the Hive Nation community app or reach out to us directly at community@hivenation.com. Our next show will be announced on all of our Hive Nation social media platforms and in our Hive Nation community app. Download the app today to stay up to date with the latest SAP trends, learn new practical solutions, and network with our SAP experts like Zerbini Luna. Feel free to send us any questions or requests to community@hivenation.com. Until next time, this is Jade with Hive Nation, a platform built for SAP consultants by consultants.